Hello there. Or do you ever get the feeling that the present government is trying to cull all the old people? Well, judging by the comments we're getting on this channel, it seems that many of you do. Welcome to Grey Matters. Hello and welcome to Grey Matters, the channel that promotes the fact that the older generation still matters and has relevance, and which looks at issues that matter to the older generation. Now, before we kick off, a huge thank you to our 2,500 new subscribers this month. You lovely people have pushed our little community here to just under 22,500 subscribers. So thank you very much indeed. We do appreciate the support. And secondly, this is my birthday edition. I'm 75 now and feeling it more every day. However, I'd love to say that I'm looking forward to what I guess will be the last chapter of my life, but with the shocks that our current government has hit us with, I'm not so sure I am. I mean, for example, in this edition, we're going to be looking at a growing feeling amongst older people that the government is intentionally attempting to reduce our numbers. Could they really be planning a cull? Well, we'll take a look at that in a moment. And of course, it's not just this government that has shown a total lack of care for us oldies, as we'll see later, when Susanna Reid crushes Boris Johnson in a 2022 GMB TV interview about the plight of pensioners. So back to this edition. In the last edition of Grey Matters, we looked at the government's reported intention to stop free prescriptions for everyone over 60, but who are below the state pension age. Now, the ramification of that is that everyone in that bracket who currently get free prescriptions will have that entitlement cancelled, unless, of course, the government chooses to exempt them. Now, if they don't, there will be thousands of older people with ill health who might struggle to pay for the items they need. Now, we've had a lot of comments about that, as you can imagine, and the Kev's wife said that with the number of prescriptions she has, it would mean she'd be destitute. She takes 13 different tablets. She says she hasn't reached pension age yet, but she's over 60, so this would mean an extra bill of £123.50 a month. Now, most are painkillers, she says, that I can't do without. Mark Hollywood commented that he says, I have a brain tumour. Sorry to hear that, Mark. Partially removed and is treated with radiotherapy. He says he also takes 13 drugs every day, plus one injection into my stomach every day, and also one injection every 12 weeks, all to keep my biology level and, more importantly, my soul and body together. Now, on top of this, because I'm designated to have a low immune system, I generally fall ill twice a year with some infection or other, requiring further drugs to keep me alive. He says if I had to pay £10 per item, then that would not be possible. Now, of course, for both the Kev's wife and Mark Hollywood, and many, many more of you in that kind of situation, there is a prepaid prescription certificate scheme we touched on in the last edition. And you would pay just, and I use the word just advisedly, you pay just £114 a year for all your meds. But as Mark goes on to say, as far as buying an exemption certificate, who's to say that it would stay for long under the government willing to take away free prescriptions from OAPs? The truth is, I would not be able to pay for my medication and would die very, very quickly. It's quite a shocking reason when you think about it. And even the prepayment prescription certificate may be out of reach for some people. I mean, Melty Mimins 6368 said, I worked for over 40 years as an installation and maintenance electrician until I lost my job on the grounds of capability, as I have arthritis in my toes, ankles, knees, fingers of both hands, lumbar spondylitis, and at present he says he takes meds for blood pressure, cholesterol, and naproxen for pain, and inhalers for asthma. If he gets a cold, it leads to severe acute asthma. Now, he takes 10 different prescription items a month, and he'd have to pay for a prepayment certificate, but being on a low income, he says that's an extra cost he can't afford. But you know, all is not lost, because there are choices available. £32.5p will get you 3 months of prescriptions, which will give you significant savings. However, the annual option for £114.50 is even better value for money, and you can pay for the annual certificate in 10 instalments. So if we use Mark Hollywood and the Kev's wife as an example, both with 13 drugs every day, you can see that we're talking about £9.90, which is the cost of each item on a prescription, times 13 every month, which is £128.70, and that works out to £1,544 a year. Now, with the annual PPC, they will pay just £11.80 a month, saving around £1,430 a year. So it's a no-brainer, really, isn't it? I reckon for most people the prepayment scheme should be affordable. However, Mark has a point. Who's to say that the government won't end the scheme or substantially increase the price of it? You know, with the removal of the winter fuel payment, the abandonment of the WASPI women's pension, the possible realignment of free prescriptions with the pension age, the progression of the assisted dying bill, you have to wonder, like hundreds of the comments we've received, if the government has an ulterior motive. Could they really be on a mission to cull the elderly, or is that just another conspiracy theory and alarmist rhetoric? What do you think? Let's face it, I mean, the elderly are largely unproductive. They take up NHS resources, they're a drain on the economy, so on and so on and so on. And the government doesn't seem to care that millions of pensioners have contributed all their lives, paid their dues, they've worked hard, many in the armed forces, the police and fire service, literally putting their lives on the line for the country or their communities. And before some bleeding heart complains that the police pensioners get huge pensions, they do get a decent pension, for sure. But it's only because they had to pay around 12% of their income into it, whereas most employees paid only 2 or 3%. Now, this country, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm sure many of you, was built on the backs of ordinary, decent, hard-working folk. Many still alive today. Many pensioners who work down the mines, in car assembly plants, steel manufacturing and similar industries now suffer from work-related illnesses for which they get little or no compensation. The post office scandal highlighted how little the employers and the governments of the day cared about the postmasters affected, most of whom are now retired and many suffering physical and mental ill health. Now, one of our commenters said that we now have one of the lowest pensions in the world, and even Greece, with its bankrupted economy, has a better pension scheme than we do. I've got no reason to disbelieve it, I haven't checked. But, you know, it does make me think that if this government is going to tank the economy, well, maybe that'll improve our pensions. Who knows? And of course, it's not just the current government that has turned its back on the elderly, as we'll see in just a moment when we come back after this short break. Hello and welcome back. Now, it's not just the current government, as I said before the break, that has turned its back on the elderly. In 2022, when Boris was Prime Minister, he was slammed for the rising energy prices, and Susanna Reid challenged him beautifully about a 77-year-old woman who only ate one meal a day and rode buses all day long in order to keep warm. Let's take a look.
You have said that individuals have to make choices about what they spend their money on. You're on record as saying that, okay? And I want to ask you then about a number of our viewers who have got in touch with us about the choices that they're making. Elsie is 77. She's a widow and she's a pensioner who lives in a council house. She receives a pension of £170 a week. Her energy bills have gone, get this, from £17 a month to £85 a month.
Yeah.
She will pay an additional £816 a year. To cut down on spending, Prime Minister, Elsie has now resorted to eating one meal a day. She's 77 years old. She's losing weight. She goes to the supermarket at the end of the day to buy yellow sticker discounted items. She gets up early in the morning to use her Freedom bus pass to stay on buses all day to avoid using energy at home. What else should Elsie cut back on, in your opinion?
Well, I don't want Elsie to cut back on anything. Let's talk about Elsie and what we're doing. And just remind you that the 24-hour Freedom bus pass was something that I actually introduced, just parenthetically.
Marvellous. So Elsie should be grateful to you for her bus pass. But what else should she cut back on?
There are plenty of things that we are doing. So what we want to do is make sure that we have people who are in particular hardship looked after by their councils. So we're putting much more money into local councils. We have the particular payments for to help elderly people, in particular, with the cost of heating. But look, Susanna,
she already qualifies for that.
And I'm going to accept.
I'm asking you now, what does Elsie cut back on now?
I don't want Elsie to have to cut back on anything, and we will make sure.
But Prime Minister, her energy bills have gone up to £85 a month.
And the best answer is to help her abate the cost of energy as we are, but also
through a loan that she has to pay back?
To make sure there's a direct cut in her council tax as a result of what we're doing, plus the
she doesn't
the
qualify
home,
for the council tax
allowance,
rebate as her home
plus
comes
the winter
under
fuel
ban
allowance. There are measures that we put in place to help people. But I'm not going to pretend to you,
can't say anything
Susanna,
to help
I'm not going to
Elsie,
pretend no.
She didn't let him off the hook at all, did she? And it got worse for him because she also started challenging him about the rising costs of everything across the board. Take a look.
The biggest issue for people right now is how they can possibly afford to pay their bills. And they wonder, are you in touch with what they're experiencing? Food prices are rising, going to be the biggest in a decade. Energy bills are rising, and they're going to rise again in October. Petrol costs are rising. Tax is rising. Food bank use is rising. The number of people in poverty is rising. The number of children in poverty is rising. This is on your watch, Prime Minister. And
we're doing everything we can to help with the pressures on family budgets. And I totally understand and get what people are going through. And it is important, though, to set the global context. This is a spike in energy prices. You mentioned food, cost of chickens is crazy, chicken breast. This is all being driven by the cost of the inputs, mainly fuel. And that has been greatly exacerbated by
It's not just a recent problem, is it? You say you're doing everything you can. You're not. You're not imposing a windfall tax on the fuel companies. And we've already heard about billions in profit for BP this morning. Why not?
Let me come to that, because that is incredible.
Can you answer that now?
Yes, of course. It's incredibly important that we focus on one of the biggest issues that we have. This country is in the insane position of having to pipe in electricity from France and elsewhere, because we haven't done enough to invest in our own security of energy and electricity supply.
Let the energy companies invest.
They need to invest.
At the same time, why don't you impose a windfall tax on the profits, just one off, in order to help people right now? It doesn't help people right now who are paying their energy bills, which have gone up hundreds, to be told we need to leave that money to the energy companies because they need to invest.
They do need to invest.
That's their job. Your job is to help people pay their bills.
Yeah, squirming a little bit. Sunak's government was just as bad. I mean, his Work and Pensions Secretary, Mel Stride, shouted headlines across the nation that pensioners would be at the forefront as difficult spending decisions were taken. Where have we heard that before? Difficult choices, difficult decisions? That phrase generally means that the over 60s are about to get stuffed over. Now, speaking on Times Radio, Mel Stride assured pensioners that the government would seek to protect them through the months ahead. He said that pensioners are absolutely at the forefront of the group that we want to protect as much as we can through these difficult times. Of course, all the hype over big pension increases under the triple lock do fall apart when you realise that older pensioners will see rises of just 1.7%. And whilst everyone is up in arms that Rachel Thieves removed the winter fuel payment, let's not forget it was the Tories who wanted to axe it in the first place, meeting massive opposition from Labour. And of course, what happened as soon as Labour got in? They cancelled the winter fuel payment. And it doesn't excuse this current government's seemingly constant attack on us, but listening to Kemi Badenoch on Prime Minister's questions, I feel that her attacks on Starmer's policies are somewhat diluted by her government's previous performances. And you know, the government spending plans are a real slap in the face to the elderly who lost their winter fuel payments, probably the biggest slap being administered by staff at the Department of Work and Pensions, who received £12 million in bonuses, many of whom were tasked with removing the winter fuel payment. And it begs the question, why do public service employees get bonuses anyway? They're not in big business, and they get pretty much overpaid for the little work they do as it is. We'll look at some of their other spending commitments in a future edition, which will further highlight the injustices that they are hitting the elderly with. And in the next edition, we're back on the TV licence trail. Our programme last year about the proposal to include TV licensing in our community charges is our most watched video, with nearly 200,000 views. And Lisa Nandy announced a few days ago some proposed changes to TV licensing that might sound a bit familiar. Keep your eyes open for that one, or better still, hit the bell icon and YouTube will let you know when it drops. And that wraps up this edition of Grey Matters. Please leave your thoughts in the comments. We read every one, and indeed we read every one of the 2,500 comments from the last edition about free prescriptions. If you subscribe, don't forget to hit that bell to ensure that you're notified of future content, as I just said. And in the meantime, thanks for joining us, and until the next time on Grey Matters, it's bye for now.